Tiki! This machine came in pieces. Tiki's bucket. This machine came in pieces. This is the gas regulator. This machine will use, it's called C25, which is a mixed gas. It's 25% argon, 75% carbon dioxide, CO2. When you order it from the supply house, you order C25. They know exactly what you're talking about. If you were going to be welding aluminum, you would want to use pure argon. If you were welding aluminum over your head, you want to use a mixture of helium and argon. I'm not planning on doing any of that with this machine. I purely bought this machine to do light duty steel welding. The directions say that it'll weld up to 3/8 plate or 3/8 steel in a single pass. I gotta see that. Actually, I think it said it would go up to 1/2 inch in a single pass with flux core wire. I don't believe that either. But it doesn't matter. That's not what I'm welding. That's not what we're going to be welding today. So these are the gas fittings. So this just goes in here like this. I'm not putting any dope on this. These are brass fittings. They're not designed to be used with any kind of sealant, and I don't want to introduce sealant into the system. So this one gets two. Got the wrong wrench. This one gets 2 wrenches, and I'm just gonna give it a little shot. I'm not gonna crank these down like McGilla Gorilla just yet, or as my neighbor used to say, plumber tight. I'll check it for leaks, and if it doesn't leak, then if it leaks, I'll tighten it up more. If it doesn't leak, I don't want it too tight. In the unboxing video, this is the gas regulator. This fell off as soon as I took it out of the box. My assumption is that it just wasn't screwed all the way in from the factory. This is what regulates your gas flow. This is the pressure in the tank. So that's it for that. This is the ground cable. The ground cable is a little, in my opinion, the ground cable is a little chintzy, but it looks like it's about, I don't know, 10 gauge, 8 gauge. It'll say on there, dummy. 6 gauge. Well, I guess the engineers at Lincoln figured that was enough. Now, this engineer figures it's enough too. So this runs in through here. This is all boilerplate stuff. This is just, they're all pretty much set up like this. It doesn't matter what kind of machine it is. These are copper. This is the cable, the ground from one side to the other. This is the wrench I needed. This also, I'm not gonna crank down too tight, just because I don't even know if this machine works, so I don't want to put it together like it's gonna be forever, only to have to take it back apart again. That's it for assembly of the small parts, the sub-assemblies. I'll put the machine up on the bench here, reset my shot, and we'll put all this stuff on the machine itself. This is the back side of the machine. This is the cooling fan. This is the thermal overload, and it looks like there's a serial number, and this is the electrical doohickey on the back, saying that it's the voltages and amperages that it draws, 30 to 180 amps is the output. So the input is 230 at 20 amps, and I'm not an electrician either. So this is the gas assembly, or this is the gas regulator that I showed earlier, and this just gets screwed on into here. Once again, I'm not going to be using any pipe dope. There we go. I'm not going to use any pipe dope on this. Argon fittings are normal fittings. They just screw on righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. I already noticed the one thing I don't like about this is there is no flat. on this. It probably won't be a problem. These don't need to be tightened down. They need to be tightened down so they don't leak, but they're tapered threads anyway. So they should be, it should just be tighten it down till it bottoms out. Give it a little tiny bit of a crank. That's it. That's all it's getting until I leak check it. I will leak check it. I'm not going to leak check it right this second. I have a little bit of a gas problem, but I'll get into that in a minute. Well, here's the instructions that came with the machine, but apparently I bought this somewhere else. I don't know. This looks like Chinese to me. Pistolet as solder, pincy solder, regulator de guiaz. I don't know what that is. Oh, there it is. Flux core welding setup guide for 125 amp, 140 amp, or 180 amp machines. We're in English. We're in America. Speak English. Okay, so work lead. I guess that's the ground. Work clamp. Yeah, that's the ground. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, so this is the flux core welding setup guide. I'm not going to use this with flux core wire right now. I no real need for that. So I'm going to use gas. And yes, okay, so I want to get a tighter shot in on that. So this is the directions for gas, which is what I will be using. I'm actually going to use straight argon for this as a test. I don't have C25. Long story short, I have a glutton of gas bottles, but I don't have a C25 bottle. So what I'm going to end up doing is purchasing a C25 bottle. I'm renting 4 bottles right now, and it's killing me. And I'll show the bigger bottle in a minute that I'm going to be using, well, which I don't really need for this. I could probably run this off like a Beermeister size bottle, a little bit bigger than a fire extinguisher, and it would probably run forever. If you're not welding in the middle of a hurricane, MIG welders don't really use a whole ton of gas. The TIG welder, on the other hand, gobbles up gas like it's free, and it's not free. It's $100 to fill the big T-tank, which I'll show in a minute. So straight out the box, this machine is wired for flux core wire. I'm going to tighten up on that because this is vitally important. As I expected, this machine is set up to be used with solid core wire. There we go. This is the solid core wire. I'm not going to take it out of the packaging and show you what it looks like, because once you unwrap it, it's like an octopus. It kind of explodes. So I'm going to be using regular steel wire, and what would be considered in my book, which when it comes to welding is kind of short, but this is what I've always used. I have used shielded wire in the past, and it actually works surprisingly well. I used it to weld my fence back together with a borrowed machine, a borrowed Lincoln actually. I did notice something I'm going to bring up in a sec. This doesn't have feet, which is a little weird. They're just like stamped. I actually have some feet around here, but I think I might have to take the machine apart to put it on. I'm not going to do that. So this the lead. This is where the torch makes contact with the wire feed assembly. And word of warning: if the machine is on and you pull the trigger and you are grounded and you touch this, you absolutely will get shocked. The voice of experience. Don't do that. This machine is not plugged in right now, obviously. Well, not obviously. The machine's not plugged in. I wouldn't be fiddling with this stuff if this machine was plugged in and turned on. There's a little switch up here. Ow. You're going to have to deal with it. I'm not resetting the camera again. There it is. There's a switch right here that is for the spool gun or for this wire feed assembly. This machine will take a spool gun. I have no need for a spool gun right now, so I'm not going to buy one. That's usually for aluminum. I have a square wave TIG welder. I don't need a spool gun right now. So this switch needs to be in this position. There's a little sticker here that says that. It was on the switch already. I might actually put the sticker back so it doesn't get bumped. I'll do that right this second, actually. That's why the sticker was on here. And I'm gonna put it back, because if shit goes wrong inside of here, you end up with what's called a bird's nest. And it's not a pleasant bird's nest. It's not a pretty hummingbird nest. It's a nasty nest of nastiness. And it will absolutely put a damper on your day if you get a bird's nest. Let me see if that'll work. Yep, that works. So this lead needs to be switched. It wasn't even very tight. So this lead needs to be switched to make this the positive. It's pretty simple. Move that to the positive. With like everything else on this project, I'm not tightening everything up like Magilla Gorilla. There's a little hole here in the front of the machine. In comes the negative, also known as the work lead. I'm gonna stick this underneath this. I'm sure some electrical engineer will say that's wrong, but I've been wrong in the past. So just make sure that's up tight against there. And Alzheimer's is kicking in. There we go. There's the nut. I would like to see star washers on these. There isn't any star washer, and the back of the wing nut isn't serrated. That's a criticism of the machine. This should have a star washer, and this should be serrated, or this should be serrated. This is perfectly smooth. This is all perfectly smooth stuff, and I don't think it would ever actually be a problem, but I'd like to see a star washer or a lock washer on these. I may actually put lock washers on them. Come on. I don't want to put Loctite on it, but I definitely would like to see some kind of locking mechanism on there. Okay, so this is the torch handle here. Now I should probably, or this is the torch where it connects into the machine here. I should probably reset the shot, but I'm not going to. It's just a hole. Now I had to back this wing nut here. This wing nut had to be backed off. Stick it in the machine and push it all the way in till both O-rings are sealed. It goes into a positive stop, but you absolutely have to make sure that this nut's out. I tried that off camera before I reset the shot angle. I actually tried to stick it in there to make sure it would go in, and it didn't. And that's because this wing nut was actually screwed down. This wing nut here was screwed down. There's another plug here in the front. It looks like just a two pin plug. Even though there's a 4-pin on the front of the machine, it looks like, well, it's pretty, seems like it's pretty idiot proof. It looks like it can only go in one way. And it's really kind of a little sticky to get screwed in. So I'll grab the camera real quick. It just goes in right there. There it is. That's where it plugs in here in the front. I'm gonna get some power. I didn't have that set up. I didn't think that far ahead. So I'm gonna get some power, and we'll plug it in and we'll feed the wire in. The cord comes with this little red thing on it, I guess to keep you from plugging it in, or to say that it's like a seal. Dizzy tried her damnedest to chew it off, but it didn't work, so I'm just going to cut it off. I'm committing a little bit of a faux pas here. My extension, I'm using an extension cord instead of plugging it directly into the wall. This is a 240 volt. This is an actual welding extension cord. I have another one too. but it's way longer and way heavier than this. It's this is actually let's see here, three wire. This is a monster. So let's plug it in. Okay, plugged in. And just for the heck of it, well, we have power. Oddly enough, the fan, the fan blows out the front, sucks in the back, blows out the front. It's pretty loud. I'm surprised. I don't know if the fan stays on all the time. We'll find out. My TIG welder has a thermostatically controlled fan that only turns on when you need it. So let's push a button here. Well, looks like it's got wire feed. You can see the knob turning. Yeah, you can see the knob turning. Right now, this nozzle is for using, this nozzle is for solid core wire. Basically, it just protects these little holes. Now, I'm not grounded. The machine is grounded. The machine is grounded to the work surface here. So with a MIG welder, you can actually, you don't get zapped. I mean, there's power going through it, but I'm not grounded. I've been zapped a few times, but it was usually because I was doing something really stupid. Usually sweating my balls off and standing in a puddle of water while holding something with a bare hand, and it didn't really hurt a whole lot. But we're going to back out a little bit, and we're going to run some wire through here. This is another kind of I mentioned this earlier, and I thought I was right, but I also thought I should check this out. This is the spool of wire that came with the machine. The Lincoln Super Arc L56 wire, which is probably what I will eventually end up buying. I found that there is a significant difference in welding wire. Now, I just want real quick here. I picked this up and I'm like, man, I've handled a lot of these over the years, and Hancho in Mexico. Hancho made in Mexico. Okay, so I thought this was really light. So I went into my toolbox and I grabbed another roll of welding wire. And damn if this isn't a lot heavier. Well, the reason it's heavier is because this, you only get maybe 2 pounds of wire. I don't even think 2 pounds of wire. This weighs probably 10 pounds. 2 pounds. Oh, okay. So this is 2 pounds of wire, and this is not telling you what it is. So this is like a printer. You buy a printer that comes with ink cartridges that are only a third of the way full. Rat bastards. Yeah, just thought I should note that. Also, I have several different wire thicknesses. I'm not going to get into wire thicknesses right now. I'm just going to just because I like to show off. So this is 030. This is 023, which is used for light sheet metal. The 030 is used. You can use the 030 for sheet metal also. The 25 works a little bit better. And this is another roll of 30. This is 35 solid wire. Now these two are from Harbor Freight, and I have had piss poor results with Harbor Freight wire. I will probably use this wire. I will attempt to use this wire. If I can't get it to work right, I will shit can it, because MIG wire is good for nothing other than MIG welding. You can't even use it to tie stuff up with it. It's some weird springiness to it. I also have some spools of aluminum. So just to get the ball rolling here, I am going to use the short roll of wire. Now, like I had mentioned earlier, this is like an octopus once you take it apart. So it's peeled over here. Stick that out. Now I've got my thumb on this thing like my life depends on it. Now the instructions here say the wire comes out the top, which makes sense because there's where the thing is. I'm going to trim this off. Doing this on camera should be interesting. Like I said, I got to keep an eye on it. I need a certain amount, but I don't want it to go nuts on me. I'm going to stick that on. the spool here, I'm holding this wire, like I said, so I don't want it to come out. I'm gonna put this spacer back in here. And put that bolt in. Ooh, put that nut on. Oh, that's too tight. The spacer. Whoa, see that? Almost wanted to go for a ride. It's interesting. So, that plastic spacer, attach, remove, two black containing knob. Let's get this. Whoa. I think I made a mistake. Yep. Ha! All right. I made a boo-boo. So I'm going to stick this back in here. Smush that down. Make sure that doesn't get screwed up. I didn't read the directions, shockingly, even though I said I read the directions. I didn't read the directions this time. So this is the wire tension here. That goes like that. When you get your inevitable backlash bird cage, you have to flip that open, and or when you're feeding wire. Apparently, like I had noted earlier, this machine comes set up to run the 035. Yeah, the 035 flux core wire, and there's grooves. This is the wire guide, and there's grooves in the wire guide, and actually they're nice enough to actually tell you that this is 035. So hopefully, oh yeah, it just popped right off. It's got a little gobbledygook of grease on it. I'm just going to very carefully take that little gobbledygook of grease, and I'm going to put it on this side. See, there's a little grease on there. I'm going to flip this over so it comes up 025. If you don't do this, and I've actually run into this problem in the past, if you don't do that, if you try to run too wide or thin of a wire through the guide, it screws up. It just causes more problems than it's worth. It only takes a second to change it. Every machine's a little bit different, but that's way easier than the machine that I learned on, or the machine that I used to use. So we're going to zoom back out again. So this is the wire tension. This is the feed that goes in. Now you can unscrew this. This is a consumable item. Eventually they wear out. This is the liner. This is also a consumable. But it shouldn't. You should never really. I don't say you should never run out. But a hobby machine, unless you're doing a lot of welding, or you're an idiot, it should take a while for that to get beat. If your machine isn't set properly, or if you have an idiot that's running a machine, that'll jam up on you. For some odd reason, whenever I used to use our old machine at work, every time I touched the machine after somebody else had touched it, I would get a wire jam. Now, I was blamed for the wire jam because, you know, the first guy that touches it is the guy who screwed it up. But I found that to be usually somebody left the machine in poor condition. I do just realize that I forgot to buy splatter shield when I was at the welding supply house the other day. I have to go back for a bottle. Now this is, I fed it in here. It's in the groove. I pushed it in probably not far, maybe a couple inches, and I'm still holding on to it though. It won't completely go crazy and unspool right now, but it's got a little loop in it. You can't really see it on camera, but there's a little, you can. There's a little loop right in there. So flip this back down. Okay, this one's spring loaded, which is nice. And then, like I said, you want to make sure that the wire's in the groove. Let's see. The wire here needs to be in this groove. Oh, and the machine is turned off, by the way. I learned a long time ago the hard way that you don't want to fiddle in here with the machine running. I may or may not zapped myself on more than one occasion. So let's back out. Okay, we're all the way out. I'm going to turn the machine on. Actually, what I'm going to do is... really? I have to switch the tips out. This is set up with an 035 tip. If you try to run 025 wire through an 035 tip, notice too I have I put tape on my channel locks here, or my Nipex Cobra grips. I don't use channel locks anymore. Now we got a bag of goodies here that came with the gun. March 23rd, 2018. Wow, this thing's fresh. Today is May 4th, 2018. So this machine, or at least this bag, oh, probably should have opened that before anyway. Oh, it came with a lot of tips. I guess they expect you to ruin them, which you do. This is a consumable item also. So it came with, right off the bat, 25. So it came with came with 3 and 3 tips. Like I said, I screwed up and I forgot to buy the anti-splatter. It's like PAM that you put inside the nozzle. I guess, you know, that's my fault. I forgot to buy it. And this nozzle threads on, which is it's kind of good but kind of bad at the same time. It looks like a high quality nozzle. It's got ceramic or Delran in it or something. I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with this type of nozzle. Most of the guns I ever used had pull-off nozzles, because the nozzles do get clogged, especially if you're not welding right. I may know a thing or two about not welding right. So this just threads in here. And this was under tension when I took it out, which I thought was kind of interesting, which means the liner was uptight, which is very important. Now, I probably could have done this without taking that off and just ran the 025 wire into the 035. I forgot what I was doing. And then taking the tip out. So let's turn it on. You don't want this knob too tight, because it'll wear on this. Yes, I'm touching it with it on. So this will just take a minute. Now you can crank this up real fast. I don't suggest doing that, because if something gets jammed up in this tip here, while you have this thing running full blast, you absolutely can create a bird cage in there and it'll ruin your day. And this is a brand new machine and I don't want to burn anything up. You can actually feel the wire coming through the liner. Oh, there it is. I could feel it right in my hand and it popped right out. I'm going to shut the machine back off real quick so you don't have to listen to the fan. Make sure I grab the right tip, 025. want to make sure there's no burrs on the end of this also. I cut it with my good wire cutters. If you use a crappy pair of wire cutters, or you burn the tip off, which a lot of guys do, I do it, it will not feed properly through the inside of the liner. And that, so that's hand tight, but it's backing right off. So I'm going to put a little bit of a, still backing right off. It's real loose. It might be because of my pliers not getting a good grip on it. Ah, there we go, now it's home. That was my pliers. I put the tape on there, it kind of burned me. So, slide the nozzle on. This is the MIG nozzle, this is the gas nozzle. Now this came with this nozzle, which I showed earlier. This is the, you put this nozzle on to run the solid core wire. It protects the gas ports. Now, I'm going to have to move the machine into its final resting place, and then I'll hook the gas bottle up. And I'm going to do a real quick on how to hook that gas bottle up too, because there's a little bit more to that than you think it would. If I don't break my neck getting back here. I don't want to open the garage door. I could open the garage door and make this a little bit easier on everybody, mainly me. This is a bottle of straight argon, which is attached to my TIG welder. This is a giant bottle. This is the biggest bottle that you can get commercially or retail. It's actually a commercial bottle. The TIG welder uses argon, pure argon, to create the plasma arc that makes everything work. It's also used for aluminum welding with the MIG machine. But long story short, I don't have a C25 bottle. I mentioned it earlier. I will get a C25 bottle. It's a bit of a waste to use straight argon, and it also doesn't produce the same type of welds with a MIG welder as it does with a TIG welder. It has to do with penetration, but for field expediency today, I'm going to set it up and I'm going to just use straight argon. I'm not going to be welding anything important. This is purely to make sure the machine works. So when you get these bottles, there's two things that are usually inevitable with the bottles. One is, well, get the lid actually came off. The lids usually don't come off, and in which case, just for theoretically, if the lid didn't come off, you just tap on it a few times carefully to make sure that it you can get it loosened up. I get tikis at my feet here. So this is a safety cap. You never want to move one of these bottles without the safety cap on. The old classic Mythbusters did it. They knock the end off the bottle and it takes off and goes through goes through their fake cinder block wall after a lot of work. But you never want to. This bottle is chained to this machine. You don't want bottles. How many threads are in this? Well, proved me wrong twice. The other thing I was going to say, and don't lose the safety cap. They get really mad at you when you lose the safety cap. So I got a little spot there under my machine that holds the safety cap. And look in here with your safety glasses on real quick. Make sure there's no spiders or mud wasps like to make little homes in there, especially if the bottles are stored outside. I date my bottles for when I get them, so I know how long they last. This bottle now will probably last me 5 years. I don't do a whole lot of TIG welding. If I did more aluminum welding, I use a higher flow rate. I'd probably use more in my post flow because this uses gas to cool the head. Before you hook up your your regulators, you want to just also look inside the regulator real quick, make sure there isn't any boogers in there, check the threads real quick, and then you always want to purge it. You should probably do that outside in a well-ventilated area, not in your shitty garage. So the other thing that inevitably happens is the bottle's facing the wrong direction, so you just gotta bear hug it. Ah. Now this bottle is chained to this machine, so I may end up having to, yeah, I'm gonna have to. Unchain it. And give it a little spin. This thing weighs a ton. There's nothing more irritating. That's really dangerous, by the way. I should have put the safety cap back on. But I'm kind of in a crappy position here. I'm in a crappy position. I got Tiki at my feet, and yeah, whatever. I lived. You want to be able to read your gauges while you're using the machine. And in this particular case, I'll be using that machine. But there's nothing more irritating than having to look around the machine. Most of these fittings are universal. This is a non-flammable gas, so therefore it's righty-tighty. If you get into fuels, propane, argon, or propane, acetylene, MAP gas, they're usually left-handed threads. I hate using an adjustable wrench to do this with, but it's what I had sitting here handy. And like I said before, I'm not going to crank this down like it owes me money, because I'm probably going to, well, I'm going to be taking this back off. So very carefully open the bottle. You don't want to crank it instantly wide open. There's 2,000 pounds of pressure inside this bottle. If you hit this little tiny shit gauge from China with 2,000 pounds of pressure, it's going to blow the top. It's going to blow the diaphragm out, and your gauge is going to be worthless. So just very carefully crack it open, and you'll hear and feel the gas go from here to there, unless you're deaf like me, and then you just feel it. So now I have gas flowing from here to here. I can't see these gauges. I'm going to come around the other side and I'll look. I'm also going to leak check these fittings with some soapy water. I use Dawn. You can use any kind of soapy water, or you can use actual leak check. I used to buy regular leak check. I don't know what, but the guys like just use soapy water. So let's see if I can get out of here without stepping on the dog. So I have this little squirt bottle right here. Oh. And it's already under pressure. So here's the tank pressure, which is at probably about 2,500 pounds, and my working pressure is at 15. I'm going to turn it up to 20. I like to run about 20. Now, the only way that you can actually tell what your working pressure is going to be is to actually pull the trigger and get gas flowing. Let's see here. I unplugged the machine to move it, so I'm going to plug it back in. This has always been sketchy to me, plugging and unplugging welders, because there's this giant, I mean, that thing will cook you like a chicken. You fry my ass like a chicken. Ugh, there we go. So now we're in, and I have a metal filing in my shoe. Now, turn the machine on, which should purge. Now, my TIG welder immediately purges when you turn it on. This didn't purge. So I'm just going to pull the trigger here. I can hear gas coming out. Well, it works. we got sparks. So you can see when I hit the button, I'm going to turn the feed way down. There we go. See how the gauge drops down? That's your actual working pressure. I like mine up around 20. Inside the garage like this, I could probably get away with a little bit less. So it's, well, that's it. I think we're ready to do a little bit of welding here.